The office door closed with an ominous click. Sarah Reeves felt ice flood her veins when Jason Caldwell turned the key in the lock, the metallic sound echoing like a death knell. She was alone with him on the 14th floor of a Manhattan high-rise where the hum of late-night traffic would swallow any cry for help. Jason turned slowly, his professional mask slipping to reveal something that went far beyond corporate arrogance. It was entitlement. It was predatory control. And Sarah knew in that moment that she had completely underestimated the man she had been working under for the past 9 months. He took a step toward her, and Sarah backed away until her spine hit the cold glass window. There was nowhere to run, no one to hear her scream. Or at least that's what she thought, because 8 floors below in a private security room, Lorenzo Salerno had just received an alert on his phone that would make Jason Caldwell wish he had never been born. Welcome back, everyone. Before we jump into today's story, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Today's story is intense from the very first second, so settle in. Alright, let's get started. Sarah Reeves never imagined her life in Manhattan would be like this. She had arrived in the city 9 months ago, fleeing from a suffocating existence in working-class Brooklyn, where opportunity felt as distant as the gleaming towers she could see from her childhood bedroom window. She was the first in her family to graduate college, clawing her way through student loans and night shifts to earn a degree that promised escape. Sterling and Caldwell, one of the most prestigious law firms in Manhattan's financial district, seemed like the answer to every prayer she'd whispered in those exhausted, hopeful moments. The job as office assistant wasn't glamorous, but it was a foothold. Sarah dreamed of corner offices, of respect earned through merit, of proving she belonged in this world of power and privilege. The reality was brutal, 14-hour days, demanding attorneys who treated assistants like furniture, cutthroat competition among staff. But Sarah's work ethic stood out. She arrived early, stayed late, never complained. She believed the rules were simple. Work hard, keep your head down, and success would follow. Then there was Jason Caldwell, senior partner in corporate litigation. 25 years at the firm. Impeccable reputation. A rainmaker who brought in millions annually. Untouchable. From day one, he made it clear he'd noticed her. It started innocuously enough, mentorship disguised as interest in her career. Month 1 brought 2 long glances across conference rooms. Month 2, comments about her appearance wrapped in professional language. That color suits you, Sarah. Professional but feminine. She'd smiled, said thank you, told herself he was just being kind. By month 4, the lunch invitation started. Private restaurants, conversations that drifted from case law to her personal life. His hand on her lower back guiding her through doorways. Standing too close in the elevator. Month 7 brought text messages outside work hours. Working late? I could use some company reviewing briefs. Excuses to call her into his office when no one else was around. Sarah accommodated. Professional deflection, nervous laughter, excuses about prior commitments. She told herself it wasn't that bad. This was just how things were in corporate America. He was a senior partner being friendly. She could handle this. Other female staff avoided Jason, she noticed. A senior attorney named Patricia pulled her aside once. Be careful around Caldwell. But Sarah smiled, nodded, convinced herself she was different. Smarter. More professional. Sarah had always believed that hard work and keeping your head down would be enough. That if she just stayed professional, stayed pleasant, stayed quiet about the uncomfortable moments, she would be safe. She couldn't have been more wrong. The situation reached its breaking point on a Tuesday evening, less crowded than usual. Sarah was in the firm's break room finishing quarterly reports when Jason appeared. His cologne hit her first, too strong, almost aggressive. His tie was loosened, top button undone, and she could smell whiskey on his breath as he moved closer. Sarah. His voice was smooth, practiced. I've been thinking about your future here. Let me take you to dinner. Somewhere upscale. We can discuss your career trajectory properly. His hand settled on her arm, warm and possessive. Sarah's stomach twisted. That's very kind, Mr. Caldwell, but I have plans tonight. Maybe we could schedule something during office hours. She tried to move past him, but Jason shifted, blocking the doorway. His expression hardened. "You're being very ungrateful, Sarah. I've taken a special interest in your development. Do you know how many assistants would kill for my attention?" He stepped closer, backing her against the counter. His hand found her waist. She could feel his breath on her neck, hot and insistent. "We could be very good for each other." Something inside Sarah snapped. 9 months of accommodation, of nervous laughter, of telling herself it wasn't that bad, it shattered. She shoved him away with both hands, hard enough to make him stumble back.
"No."
Her voice rang out, clear and definitive. "I'm not interested. I've never been interested. If you touch me again, I'm going to HR. I'll file a lawsuit if I have to." For a moment, Jason just stared at her. Then his professional mask cracked completely, revealing something cold and predatory beneath. He smiled, a terrible smile without warmth. "You're making a very big mistake." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you know how many careers I've buried? How many young women like you I've watched crash and burn in this city?" He straightened his tie with deliberate precision. "You'll regret this, Sarah." He walked away without another word, leaving Sarah shaking against the counter. She told herself maybe he'd finally understood. Maybe this was over. Jason Caldwell wasn't just a predatory boss with an ego problem. He was a man who had spent 25 years perfecting the art of intimidation and getting away with it. And Sarah Reeves had just committed the unforgivable sin of telling him no. 4 days later, the email arrived. Subject: Performance review required. Friday evening, 8 p.m., his office. Mandatory. Every instinct screamed danger. But Sarah had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to lose this job. Friday evening, she stepped into the elevator. Each floor ascending felt like a countdown to her own execution. The 14th floor was empty except for distant cleaning staff. Jason's corner office sat isolated at the end of a long hallway. When he turned that key in the lock, the metallic click echoing through the empty space, Sarah knew she was in real danger. What Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that her life was already intertwined with Lorenzo Salerno's in a way she would never imagine. Lorenzo was 40 years old and controlled an extensive network of operations across New York: real estate, construction, shipping, and ventures that existed in legal gray areas most people pretended not to see. Sterling and Caldwell's building was one of his properties. He owned half of Midtown through a complex web of shell corporations, maintaining the facade of a respected developer and philanthropist. On paper, he was a legitimate businessman. In reality, he was a man who answered to no one, whose word was law in certain circles, whose enemies had a habit of disappearing. 5 weeks ago, Lorenzo made an unusual decision. He was tired of yes-men and carefully staged performances whenever he inspected his properties. He wanted to see real operations without preparation, without the artificial polish everyone applied when they knew the boss was watching. He entered the building's coffee shop early one morning, wearing a simple dark suit instead of his usual tailored Italian pieces, and sat at the counter. That's when he met Sarah. She had no idea who he was. To her, Lorenzo was just another customer on a quiet morning. She served him with the same professional efficiency she gave everyone, but there was something different about her. She actually made eye contact when she spoke. She smiled genuinely, not that forced corporate smile most people wore like armor. When he returned 2 days later, she remembered his order: black coffee, no sugar, and greeted him with real warmth. "Back again? How's your day starting?" Lorenzo found himself fascinated. When a rude customer ahead of him berated her over a trivial mistake, Sarah handled it with grace and humor instead of anger, diffusing the situation without humiliation. They talked briefly between her serving other customers. Sarah mentioned she worked upstairs at the law firm, loved the city's energy despite its harshness, spoke about her hopes for advancement with an optimism that seemed almost naive. There was an optimism in her, a belief in fairness and hard work that Lorenzo hadn't seen in himself for 20 years. He returned 4 more times. Always early morning, always sitting at the counter, always leaving cash tips that made her eyes widen. Sarah started greeting him by name, she'd asked on the second visit, genuinely interested. She shared stories about difficult attorneys, dreams about making partners someday. Lorenzo, careful not to reveal too much, found himself looking forward to these visits in a way he never did with anything. Sarah made him remember what it felt like to be human instead of a weapon. That Friday evening, the alert came through on his phone. After-hours movement in Jason Caldwell's office. Security protocol flagged. Lorenzo checked the camera feed and saw Sarah. Saw the locked door. Saw Jason's predatory approach. Everything in Lorenzo's world narrowed to one singular focus. He was about to remind Jason Caldwell that there are some men you don't cross, and some women you never touch. Jason moved towards Sarah with his professional mask completely gone, replaced by entitled fury. She backed away instinctively until her spine hit his desk. Nowhere left to go. 9 months of patience, Jason snarled, voice tight with rage. 9 months of mentorship, of investing in your career, and this is how you repay me? His face twisted with contempt. Every successful woman in this firm understands how things work. You think they got corner offices on merit alone. Jason, please, Sarah tried to reason. You're not thinking clearly. He grabbed her shoulders and slammed her back against the desk. Office supplies scattered, crashing to the floor. His hand clamped over her mouth, muffling her attempted scream before it could start. His eyes were wild, the professional facade completely shattered, revealing the predator beneath. Jason's body pinned hers, his weight immobilizing her, knee forcing between her legs. No one will believe you, he hissed against her ear. I've been at this firm since before you were born. I'm a senior partner. You're a nobody from Brooklyn. Sarah fought, tried to push him away, but panic was freezing her muscles, making every movement sluggish and weak. Jason raised his hand and slapped her face hard enough to snap her head sideways. Pain exploded across her cheek. She tasted blood, her lips split against her teeth, sharp copper flooding her mouth. Jason grabbed her face, forcing her to look at him as he began fumbling with his belt. This is really happening, Sarah's mind screamed. No one's coming. No one knows. The door exploded inward. Lorenzo didn't knock, didn't announce himself. He kicked the door with surgical precision that destroyed the lock entirely, with splintering around twisted metal. The coffee shop stranger was gone, replaced by something ancient and lethal. Dark hair slicked back, sharp Mediterranean features set in marble fury. All in black, a tailored suit that moved like water. Tall, powerful, moving with a predator's grace. His face could have been carved from stone until fury animated it, eyes that had seen and done unspeakable things now fixed on Jason Caldwell. Jason was torn away from Sarah, lifted and thrown against the floor-to-ceiling windows hard enough to crack the glass. Sarah froze, hand over her mouth, tears streaming, unable to process what was happening. Who the hell do you? Jason started. Lorenzo's first punch broke his nose instantly. The wet crack was followed by Jason's scream. Blood sprayed across his expensive shirt, his desk, the carpet. Lorenzo grabbed him by the throat, partially lifting him until his feet barely touched the ground. Do you know who I am? Lorenzo's voice was low, deadly calm. Worse than any shouting. Jason's face went white. Recognition hit him like lightning. Everyone in Manhattan real estate knew Lorenzo Salerno. He hadn't just assaulted an employee, he'd touched someone under Lorenzo Salerno's protection. In this world, that was a death sentence. Lorenzo threw Jason across the room. His body hit the mahogany bookshelf, expensive law volumes crashing down around him. Then Lorenzo turned to Sarah, and the murderous rage softened to genuine concern. Sarah, he approached slowly, hands raised, voice gentle. It's me. You're safe now. Sarah couldn't reconcile the images. Coffee shop stranger versus this man who just destroyed Jason with terrifying ease. Jason made a fatal mistake. He fumbled in his desk drawer for a letter opener. Lorenzo moved impossibly fast, disarming him before the weapon cleared the drawer. One practice strike to Jason's solar plexus left him gasping and immobilized on the floor. Lorenzo removed his jacket, draping it over Sarah's shoulders, hiding her torn blouse. Anthony Costa appeared, Lorenzo's lieutenant, who'd been waiting in the stairwell. "Clean this up," Lorenzo ordered. "I want Caldwell's background, everything. Every woman he's ever touched, every complaint HR buried." He crouched beside Jason. "You have 24 hours to leave New York. If I see your face again, they'll never find your body." Lorenzo extended his hand to Sarah. "Let me take you somewhere safe." Sarah stared at that hand like it was a crossroads. Accept and enter his world, or refuse and face Jason's retaliation alone. Her mind raced through calculations. Jason would destroy her career if she reported this. HR would protect the senior partner, not the assistant. She had no family money for lawyers, no connections to fight back. But this man, this dangerous man, had just saved her life. She placed her hand in Lorenzo's. His grip was warm, steady, anchoring. Her legs nearly gave out, and his arm went around her waist, supporting her weight as if she weighed nothing. Anthony stayed behind to handle Jason, a phrase that made Sarah's stomach twist with understanding. Lorenzo guided her to a private elevator requiring a special key, bypassing the main lobby entirely. In the underground garage, David Moreno waited beside a black Mercedes S-Class with tinted windows, a driver who asked no questions and didn't look twice at Sarah's torn clothes or bleeding lip. Inside the car, Lorenzo maintained a respectful distance, but close enough that Sarah could feel his presence, solid and protective. "Who are you?" Sarah found her voice. "Really? I own the building," Lorenzo said quietly. "And about 40 others in Manhattan. I'm a businessman." Even through her trauma, Sarah was sharp enough to see past that. "Businessmen don't move like you just did." Lorenzo was silent for a moment, deciding. He could lie. Instead, he chose truth. "I operate in spaces where the law is flexible. I have interests that require protection. I handle problems that others can't." Sarah should have been terrified. Somehow, she felt safer than she had in months. "Why did you help me? How did you know?" Lorenzo's expression softened with something like vulnerability. "I've been coming to your coffee shop. You made me feel normal." He paused. "I have cameras throughout my buildings. Security flagged after-hours access. I saw it was Jason's office and your ID card." The Mercedes stopped at a luxury high-rise in Tribeca. The doorman nodded respectfully at Lorenzo without question. "You can't go home tonight," Lorenzo explained. "Caldwell might be stupid enough to try something. You'll stay with me until I'm certain you're safe. I can take care of myself." "Sarah." His voice was gentle. "Your lip is bleeding and your hands are shaking. Let me help. Please." The penthouse required a biometric scanner and key code. When the doors opened, Sarah saw floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, minimalist luxury she'd only seen in magazines. Lorenzo showed her the guest suite, bigger than her entire Brooklyn apartment. Fresh clothes were already laid out in her size. He'd noticed. Ordered them while they were in the car. "There's food in the kitchen. Security outside. You're safe here. Rest." "What's going to happen to Jason?" Lorenzo's measured response was clear. "Jason Caldwell will no longer be a problem. Not for you. Not for anyone." The tone made it obvious. This wasn't a legal solution. Sarah should have been horrified. Instead, she felt satisfaction. Felt justice being done. Lorenzo saw it in her eyes. The moment Sarah accepted not just protection, but the methods that came with it. He stepped closer, hand gently touching her uninjured cheek. The touch was surprisingly tender from hands she'd watched destroy a man minutes ago. Sarah's hand caught his wrist. Didn't push away. Just held the contact. Lorenzo's control wavered. Then he pulled back. "I'll have Dr. Klein come examine you. And Sarah? You're safe now. I promise you that." Left alone, Sarah found the bathroom mirror. Her face showed trauma, lips swollen and split. But her eyes didn't look like a victim's. They looked like someone who'd just made a choice. Sarah spent 6 days in Lorenzo's penthouse. Her physical injuries healed, the split lip, the bruised cheek, but emotional processing was slower, more complex. Dr. Robert Klein visited twice, a discreet physician who asked no questions and treated her with gentle professionalism that suggested he'd done this before. Lorenzo was an attentive host but never intrusive, giving Sarah space while making himself available. They talked for hours late into the night, and Sarah discovered unexpected depths. He collected rare books, an entire library of first editions. He was fluent in 4 languages, had sharp wit and dry humor, possessed deep knowledge of art and architecture. But she also saw the darkness. Phone calls where his voice dropped to deadly calm. Anthony Costa's frequent visits with situation reports. Conversations in Italian she wasn't meant to understand. The holstered gun she glimpsed when his jacket shifted. Sarah began understanding the duality. 2 worlds coexisting in one man. Legitimate businessman, and something far more dangerous. On day 6, Sarah knocked on Lorenzo's office door. "I want to work for you," she said without preamble. "Not as an assistant. I want to understand your businesses." Lorenzo looked up, surprised. "Sarah, you don't know what you're asking." "I spent 9 months being powerless," she interrupted. "Being professional, being accommodating, and it almost got me raped. I'm done with that version of my life." Lorenzo stood, concerned. "The deeper you go into this world, the harder it becomes to leave. There are things you'll see, things you'll know, that will change you." "I'm already changed," Sarah said firmly. "Jason changed me. You changed me. I'm not going back to that law firm. I'm not going back to being someone things happen to." Lorenzo studied her face, and something shifted in his expression. Pride mixed with concern. "Start with the legitimate businesses," he finally said. "Learn the operations, the money flow, the network. If after months you still want to go deeper, we'll discuss it then." They shook hands. An electric current passed between them that had nothing to do with business. The following weeks revealed Sarah's natural gift for strategic thinking. She saw patterns in financial reports others missed, asked questions that impressed even Anthony Costa. Lorenzo introduced her to his network: real estate managers, construction foremen, restaurant owners. Each introduction included a silent message: "She's under my protection." Sarah learned quickly, absorbing information like she had in law school. She earned respect not because she was Lorenzo's, whatever she was, but because she was brilliant. But she also saw the shadows: conversations that stopped when she entered, exchanges of meaningful looks, references to problems being handled. Sarah knew she was only seeing the surface. There were layers still hidden. The revelation both thrilled and terrified her. She wanted to see more, understand completely. Each step deeper was a step further from the life she'd planned. Sarah had spent her entire life believing that playing by the rules would protect her, that education and hard work were enough. Jason Caldwell had shattered that illusion with brutal efficiency. But Lorenzo was showing her a different truth, that real power came from understanding the rules were never fair to begin with. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah moved into Lorenzo's world, and she was beginning to thrive. Late afternoon sunlight streamed through the penthouse windows as she reviewed acquisition reports for Lorenzo's hotel portfolio, her notes sharp and insightful. She'd proven herself repeatedly, seeing patterns others missed, asking questions that impressed even Anthony Costa. When Lorenzo's phone rang, she barely glanced up. But the shift in his tone made her pen still against the paper. He stepped into his office, and when he returned minutes later, his expression was unreadable but dangerous in a way that made her stomach clench. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, already knowing the answer would change everything. Lorenzo sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the tension radiating from his body. "Jason Caldwell is back in New York." Sarah's blood turned to ice.
"What?"
"You said." "I gave him 24 hours to leave. He left. Went to Boston. I had people watching him." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "He returned to Manhattan 3 days ago. Been asking questions about you, where you're living, who you're with. He made contact with the Kovac family." "Serbian organized crime," Sarah whispered, understanding immediately. "Your rivals. They saw an opportunity to hit me through someone I clearly value." The weight of those words settled over her. She'd become a target, a weakness in Lorenzo's armor. I should leave. Go somewhere else. I'm putting you at risk. Lorenzo's hands gripped her shoulders instantly, forcing her to meet his eyes. You're not going anywhere. You're exactly where you belong. His voice was absolute, brooking no argument. Anyone who tries to touch you goes through me first. I don't care if it's Caldwell or the entire Kovac family. The raw possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel valued, protected, essential. She saw something deeper in his eyes. This was more than protection. Lorenzo leaned closer, so close she could see amber flecks in his dark eyes. The moment stretched between them, both knowing they were about to cross a line neither could uncross. Then Lorenzo pulled back, iron control reasserting itself. I need to go handle this. Frank and 2 others will stay here. You don't open the door for anyone. Lorenzo. He kissed her forehead, brief and tender, a promise without words. Then he was gone, leaving with Anthony Costa and 2 armed men. The penthouse felt emptier than it should. Sarah tried to work, but her mind kept returning to Jason, to what Lorenzo would do when he found him. She wasn't naive. Lorenzo didn't handle problems with conversation. The disturbing realization crept over her. She hoped Lorenzo killed Jason. Wanted him dead for what he'd tried to do. This thought should have horrified her, but it didn't. It felt like justice. Hours passed. The sun set over Manhattan, city lights glittering like a jeweled web. Her phone lit up with a text from Lorenzo. Everything's under control. Be home soon. Relief flooded through her as she clutched the phone like a lifeline. She'd changed so fundamentally from law firm assistant to a woman waiting for her what? Protector? Lover? Both. The sound of breaking glass shattered her thoughts. Sarah's heart stopped. The security was supposed to be impenetrable. Frank's voice shouted from somewhere in the penthouse. Get to the panic room. She ran, but she didn't make it before the office door slammed open. Jason burst through the door flanked by 2 hired men, Kovac family enforcers with dead eyes and thick necks. Sarah's training kicked in. She grabbed her phone, sent Lorenzo a single word. Danger. Then she looked for a weapon, fingers closing around the heavy crystal paperweight on Lorenzo's desk. Jason was unrecognizable. His face still showed signs of Lorenzo's beating, but something worse lived in his eyes now. The professional veneer completely shattered, replaced by barely contained madness. This was a man with nothing left to lose. You destroyed my life, Sarah. His voice cracked with bitter rage. My career, my reputation, my position, all gone because you couldn't just be grateful. I was offering you everything, mentorship, connections, a path to the top. And you chose him, a criminal. Jason's laugh was broken, hysterical. Lorenzo Salerno thinks his money and reputation make him untouchable. But the Kovac family taught me something. Everyone has a price. He gestured toward the hallway where Frank lay unconscious, blood pooling beneath his head. The other guard had been bribed, already fled. Sarah backed away, keeping the desk between them, mind racing. Lorenzo knows you're here. He's coming. When he gets here, you're dead. I know. That's why we need to move fast. I'm taking you with me. If I'm going to lose everything, so is he. One enforcer moved around the desk, thick-necked, dead-eyed. Sarah gripped the paperweight, knowing it wasn't enough but refusing to go down without fighting. The penthouse door exploded inward. Lorenzo entered like a hurricane of controlled violence, Anthony Costa and David Moreno flanking him. The choreography was brutal and efficient. Lorenzo took down the first enforcer with devastating precision, punch to the throat crushing his windpipe, knee to solar plexus. The man dropped, choking. The second enforcer drew his gun, but Anthony was faster, disarming him with a brutal wrist lock before slamming his head against the marble column. Blood smeared expensive stone. Jason lunged desperately, grabbed Sarah from behind. Cold steel pressed against her throat, a kitchen knife. The blade rested against her carotid artery. One slash and she'd bleed out in seconds. Lorenzo froze mid-step, every muscle coiled but unable to risk sudden movement. His eyes locked with Sarah's. She saw murder there, saw love there, saw calculation. Back away. All of you. Jason's voice trembled and cracked. I want a car downstairs, cash, and I'm taking her with me. Sarah felt him shaking, sweat soaking through his shirt, breath ragged with panic. He was beyond reason, operating on rage and desperation and the knowledge he was already dead. Jason, think about this. Lorenzo's voice was supernaturally calm. Buildings surrounded. My men on every floor, every exit. Only way you leave alive is if you release her right now. Anthony and David fanned out, trying to get angles, but Jason kept turning, using Sarah as a shield. Alive? I'm already dead. You made sure of that. Jason's voice rose to a scream. But I'm taking her with me. You're going to watch her die knowing you couldn't save her. He pressed the knife harder. Sarah felt the sharp sting as the blade broke skin. Blood trickled down her neck, warm rivulets soaking into her collar. Lorenzo's expression changed. Something fundamental shifted. Negotiation was over. Sarah saw it. The transformation from controlled to predatory in a heartbeat. Lorenzo moved impossibly fast. Closed 10 feet in a blink. One hand deflected the knife away from Sarah's throat. The other grabbed Jason's wrist with bone-crushing force. An audible crack as wrist bones shattered. Jason's scream was high and agonized. The knife clattered to marble. Lorenzo spun Sarah away, shoving her toward Anthony, who caught her. Jason clutched his broken wrist, sobbing, on his knees. He tried to scramble for the fallen knife with his good hand. Lorenzo's boot crushed his fingers. Another crunch, another scream. Then Lorenzo was on him, fury completely unleashed. This wasn't business. This was primal, personal, unstoppable. Someone had tried to kill what Lorenzo loved, and the price had to be paid in blood. Anthony turned Sarah away. Don't watch this. But she heard everything. Sounds of fists on flesh. Bones breaking. Jason's screams becoming whimpers, becoming silence. Lorenzo's controlled breathing never changing. This was work to him. Then quiet. Heavy, absolute. Lorenzo's hands touched Sarah's shoulders, gentle despite blood coating his knuckles. He turned her to face him. Look at me, Tesoro. Are you hurt? Sarah opened her eyes. Lorenzo stood before her. White shirt splattered red, but his eyes held only concern for her. He examined her throat where the knife had opened a shallow cut, maybe an inch long. His jaw clenched with renewed fury at the mark on her skin. Behind him, Jason's body lay crumpled, unmoving. Sarah didn't need confirmation. Anthony was already directing cleanup. David spoke rapidly on his phone, calling the crew that handled these things. The bribed guard was dragged in, face draining of color as Lorenzo's attention shifted. You let them in. You put her in danger. Explain. Lorenzo's low, controlled voice was worse than any shouting. The guard stammered about $50,000, threats to his family, begging in English and Italian. Lorenzo cut him off with rapid Italian to Anthony. The guard's face went white as he understood his fate. Take him to the warehouse, Anthony said. I'll deal with him after this is cleaned up. Sarah understood viscerally. In Lorenzo's world, betrayal had only one punishment. Frank was regaining consciousness, groaning, hand to his bloody head. Dr. Klein arrived, must have been on standby. He examined Frank, then approached Sarah. Superficial. Won't even scar. You were very lucky, Ms. Reeves. Lucky. She'd almost died, but in Lorenzo's world, walking away was lucky. This was no longer about territory or business or even revenge. This was about someone daring to threaten what Lorenzo Salerno had claimed as his own. And in his world, that crime demanded a payment measured in blood and permanence. Lorenzo guided Sarah away from the office, from the violence, from Jason's body. In her room, he sat her on the bed and retrieved the first aid kit. His hands were impossibly gentle as he cleaned the cut on her throat, applied antiseptic, bandaged with meticulous care. Sarah watched his face, concentration absolute, concern unguarded. When finished, Lorenzo didn't move away. He stayed kneeling before her, and for the first time, Lorenzo Salerno looked vulnerable. I failed you. I promised you'd be safe. I should have ended this when I had the chance. Sarah's hands covered his. You didn't fail. I chose this. I chose you. Her voice was steady, certain. I knew the risks. I'm here because I want to be. Because for the first time in my life, I have real power. Because I'd rather be with you in this dangerous world than safe and powerless anywhere else. Something broke in Lorenzo. All the walls he'd maintained crumbled. He stood, pulled her into his arms, holding her with an intensity that spoke of fear and relief and something deeper. Sarah clung to him, finally letting herself cry, not from fear but from release. Lorenzo murmured promises against her hair, vows that she was safe, that he'd never let anyone hurt her again. When she pulled back, she looked into his eyes and saw everything she needed to know. The kiss was inevitable, consuming, the world disappearing except for this moment. No more Jason, no more threat. Just them, just this connection they'd been denying. They broke apart breathless, a silent question in Lorenzo's eyes. Sarah's answer was to pull him back, showing without words she was certain. That night wasn't just physical, it was emotional vulnerability neither had shared with anyone. Stories exchanged, fears revealed, dreams confessed, truths they'd guarded laid bare. Sarah fell asleep in Lorenzo's arms, feeling safer than she had her entire life. Morning brought reality. Lorenzo handled consequences with cold efficiency, bodies disappearing, the Kovac family receiving their message to back off, the bribed guard being dealt with, new security protocols implemented. Sarah watched him work, saw how easily he navigated darkness. Her realization settled like stone. She'd crossed completely to the other side. No going back. She was no longer Sarah Reeves from Brooklyn. Now she was Sarah Reeves who'd chosen a dangerous man and a morally complex life. The scary part? She didn't regret anything. 6 months later, Sarah sat in her office on the executive floor of Lorenzo's Tribeca Tower, reviewing expansion plans for a hotel acquisition in Miami. Her role had evolved: strategic advisor, Lorenzo's partner in legitimate and shadow operations. She'd become indispensable, not because she was Lorenzo's lover, but because she was brilliant. Sharp analytical mind, seeing connections others missed. The organization respected her because she'd earned it through merit. Of course, not everything was perfect. She still had nightmares about Jason, the knife, the violence. Moments questioning who she'd become, whether the woman in the mirror was someone she recognized. But then Lorenzo would hold her, remind her why she'd made these choices. Strength wasn't remaining pure, it was facing darkness and standing anyway. Lorenzo entered without knocking, their routine now. He kissed the top of her head, casual affection that still accelerated her heart. Ready for dinner? Celebrating 6 months, and the Miami deal. Sarah saved her work, smoothed the expensive dress Lorenzo had bought. One of many changes. They left hand in hand, security following at a respectful distance. Sarah looked out at Manhattan, the city that had become her home, in the most unexpected way. She'd come as a Brooklyn girl chasing a corporate dream. Found love, power, purpose. But also violence, moral complexity, fundamental change. She was no longer innocent. Life existed in gray areas. Sometimes the most dangerous people were capable of the deepest love. Lorenzo squeezed her hand as they entered the restaurant, greeted with deference. Sarah looked at him, the man who'd saved her life, then given her a reason to live fully. She didn't know what challenges were coming, what difficult choices lay ahead. But she had absolute certainty. She wouldn't face anything alone. The office assistant from Brooklyn and the king of Manhattan. Together, unstoppable. They laughed over dinner, looking like a normal couple. But Sarah knew better. They were anything but normal. And she wouldn't have it any other way. Sarah Reeves had found her place in a world of shadows and power, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. Because for the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving or accommodating or hoping someone else would save her. She was truly, dangerously, powerfully alive. And there you have it, Sarah and Lorenzo's story. A woman who refused to stay a victim, and a dangerous man who would burn the world down to keep her safe. So tell me, would you have made the same choice Sarah did? Would you walk away from everything you knew for a chance at real power, real protection, real love, even if it came wrapped in darkness? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story grabbed you from that very first locked door and didn't let go until the end, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who loves stories that don't apologize for being intense. Tomorrow brings another journey into the spaces where right and wrong blur together, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks for being here with me today. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most dangerous choices are the ones that finally set us free.